Welcome back to the Dynasty Football Key. And today's guest, I've got from the Operation Domination with the Fantasy Football Advice Network, none other than Dan the Man Mater. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
Yes, sir. Yeah, man. It was really awesome meeting some of you guys at the Fantasy Football Expo. And I actually signed up last week for membership with you guys. So, yeah, man, excited to dig into that. To be honest, my first year making content, it's just so much going on. Like, I can't even stay on top of what I'm doing, but I'm happy to jump in there with you guys. And I actually have a co-host that's in there, Biggs. On Tuesdays, we do a Dynasty Stock Market show on the Player Profiler News channel over there. And I know he's got an episode coming out on the Fantasy Football Advice Network on Sunday. So you guys go check that out and check out everything that Dan's doing. I mean, there's just so much great content on the Fantasy Advice Network. So it's a ton of creators. I was in the chat with a few different here over the past week. I mean, like every day there's just another different show, man. But how you guys doing over there? And yeah, man, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, and I appreciate the intro there. Yeah, too. Biggs is great. Biggs is fantastic, and he does that show with Grindberg and Fantasy Forecast every week, and then they do PAT on Thursday nights, which is right after my show when I do with our doctor there, Brian Scott, and he comes on. We do the injury list, and then on Wednesdays we go live at 9:30 on the Fantasy Football Advice Network on YouTube, and you can also check out Operation Domination Football on any podcast apps you're on. But yeah, we got shows every single week. We got a great crew. And the thing we get most excited about is that community platform that you just signed up for, which I really greatly appreciate, by the way. We just built a whole platform out where it's basically social media, but just for fantasy sports. So it's 24/7 people talking fantasy sports, helping each other out, giving each other advice. And it's a great place for content creators too, because we've set up a way where guys can get monetized much faster than they would, especially when they're first starting out any other platform. So we're real excited about it. And of course, the content part of it as well.
Yes, sir. Hey, man, that's that'll help me a lot. But I mean, there's just so much going on right now. I mean, we've been grinding through the off season, and week one is in the books, and one game into week two, and a lot is changing already. Man, it's been crazy. For me, I'm already a little bit curious. I did a ranking show a couple days ago, and I didn't even have a couple of these guys in the top 12, unfortunately. So I've moved up Devon Chan, James Cook at the top of the list. This is actually just for week two ranking. So, I mean, it's going to be tough for a lot of these other players to jump up above them. 29 and a half, I think, for Devon Chan, 28 and a half for James Cook. So it's going to be a tough week for someone to pass them this week. And one of my first videos 7 months ago, I posed the question could Devon Chan be RB1? And I mean, it's already looking like he might have an RB1 finish this week. The week before, he had, I believe, 28 points as well. So he's the leader of the pack at the moment. Now we do have a significant injury to Tua Tagovailoa. Is that putting a damper on that hype for you? How are you feeling about the situation?
Well, I've actually had to do a little bit of a 180 on Devon Achane anyway,
Okay.
and he did it for me actually last night's football game. So one of the things about Achane from last year, it wasn't just the splitting with Raheem Mostert. It was the fact that when he didn't have a 20-yard or longer run, then he would be like fantasy running back 44, fantasy running back 45. He would fall in that territory. And my question for him was, hey, if you're going to be given a bulk of the work, are you going to be dependent on that big play, or can you actually consistently and efficiently run between the tackles and be effective? He did that in Thursday Night Football, and that's the first time I've really seen him do it with that kind of workload. Didn't rip off a big 20-yarder and was able to get in the end zone and still put up a big fantasy standpoint. So I'm going to be doing a 180 a little bit on Devon Achane, where I questioned that before. Now, as far as, with the whole situation with Tua, we'll see when he comes back. I don't think, one, that he's going to retire. Two, I don't think this is going to be a season-ending situation for him. We have to think he's going to miss at least week 3. But if anything, what's going to happen is Mike McDaniel is going to be putting all of his game plan power into the running game. I mean, Raheem Mostert, he should probably be back, but it's going to be Achane as the number one weapon. Really, look at Skylar Thompson. He doesn't have the best arm in the world. It's going to be easier for him to check the ball down to Devon Achane. So I think he's the only one who's safe. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, they take hits. I mean, Tyreek Hill is somebody you can't take out of your lineup right now, especially if you're playing redraft. But Waddle is going to be a borderline flex play for me, I think, here until we know that Tua is coming back. So I think Devon Achane is the only one that I think you can still trust, really, from that standpoint.
Yeah, and that's rough, man. You see, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, 4 points for Hill, or 6 points for Hill, and about something around there like 8 for Waddle. Actually, that's what it was. So they're probably going to be maybe even outside the top 36 after this week is done. So that's a brutal blow for this team. But let's hope Tua gets healthy, man. I know we've had some concussion scares with him in the past, so just hoping everything's okay with him. Do you have any, on the other side of the ball? We already had Josh Allen up there, so no real changes there. But Dalton Kincaid, any movement for you with Dalton Kincaid? I think it's a couple weeks where we're just, hoping he was going to be just getting all these targets. And, I'm not sure I'm seeing that right now. How are you feeling about Dalton Kincaid?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not panicking yet. Let's put it that way. With week 2, he still ran the second most routes on the team. He still played the second most snaps. I think what's significant is that week 1, week 2, with Dawson Knox healthy and on the field, we saw Dalton Kincaid be the starting, tight end, and that's something we didn't see last year. What's happened the past 2 weeks is it's just been the Josh Allen, James Cook show. It's been the Joe Brady offense. Now, what surprises me is the defense on the Buffalo side, how good they've been, because I wasn't really banking on them being this good with the whole roster churn out. And I'm expecting at some point they're going to be pushed on to the pedestal of where they have to throw the ball a little bit more. Am I a little bit worried that the target distribution seems to be very spread out instead of consolidating it around Dalton Kincaid plus one of the other wide receivers? A little bit as far as, is Kincaid going to give me top 5 potential? Maybe not. Maybe not with Joe Brady. But he's still a top 10 play. Yes. At some point, Josh Allen's going to have to throw the ball more than 20 times in a game. So it's kind of the back and forth here you're going with. So I'm not panicking on him yet, but it is interesting to see the way the Buffalo Bills are being constructed right now and how they're playing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm riding it out because Josh Allen looks good. These guys are 2-0. It's going to be a lot of touchdowns being scored on this team. And with the tight end position, I think you just got to throw them in there for the most part. And I've got Jonnu Smith, who actually got a decent amount of targets. But again, with the Tua scenario, I'm not sure if we can bank on that too much. But it seemed that the defense's game plan was just cover Tyreek Hill like nobody's business. And again, this was a late in the game injury. The score actually didn't change after the injury happened, so all the damage was already done as far as how they were able to limit Tyreek. So I wonder if other teams kind of game plan around that, and maybe Jonnu has other weeks just target wise similar to this. No score in either of the previous games, but 7 targets this game with only 2 in the game before. So we never expect anything at all from Miami's non-Waddle Tyreek Hill options, but just a guy you can throw in, maybe a dart throw, and again, let's hope Tua comes back. So
yeah,
all right, and with the other side of the ball continued, let's go back over to James Cook, and for a second it looked like he was going to be the RB1. He got edged out by like a point. Just depends on the format. I believe it's so close between these two, but you feeling back in on this guy, like from a dynasty perspective, or is this just going to be this end season when there's not a lot of targets around? How do you feel about James Cook here?
I mean, dynasty perspective, he's a little bit higher. Redraft perspective, I still view James Cook as a mid to high end RB2. I know he had the 3 touchdowns yesterday, but this is a guy who has a history of not scoring touchdowns. This is a guy who has a history of not being able to converting when inside the 5-yard line, despite the fact that he does give opportunities almost every single week with that team. And you saw last night, 2 of his 3 scorers came from big plays. So
Yeah.
I think it's still going to be an issue with James Cook as far as his scoring potential. But what is clear is that as long as Joe Brady's the offensive coordinator, James Cook has been an elite level, top 8 running back essentially since going back to week 9 last year when Joe Brady took over. So from that standpoint, yeah, you're gonna get the volume. He is a big play type running back. I'm not in on him in the sense I think he can be elite and like a top 5 guy. I do think the touchdowns, the lack thereof, generally speaking, will drive him down. But this obviously is a good fit for him with the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I like it. I was doubting it a little bit, but I mean, it's hard to deny this offense is pretty good. So yeah, 2 good backs here. I really was impressed with Barkley on a new team and how he performed there. Brees Hall, I think he's still going to get it done. Bijan looking like a lock for some workload, but Kirk Cousins didn't seem to be fully back. But these are guys you just kind of have to start at this point. We did get confirmation on some other injury news. But first, I'm going to say, guys, if you got any questions, throw them in the chat. Let us know. Again, we got Dan Mater here from the Fantasy Football Advice Network, and you can find him on Twitter at Dan Mater FF. And guys, Jordan Mason, potentially an RB1 for maybe the next 4-5 games. Talk about potential league winner on the front end of the season. Jordan Mason could be a really good help for a lot of folks in lineups this week and going forward. So I've got him locked into the top 6. Is that crazy, or how are you feeling about Jordan Mason?
I mean, it's not crazy. I have him RB15 for this particular week. It's actually a tough matchup with Minnesota. This is the one team with Brian Flores, the way he coaches his team. He knows how to attack this Shanahan scheme because he literally runs against it every day in practice with Kevin O'Connell. The 49ers had issues running the football against Minnesota last year. In fact, they had 3.7 yards per carry against Minnesota. It was the lowest of the entire year. So this matchup for this particular week, I think he's more of a mid-level RB2. But if McCaffrey does in fact go on IR, which has been the big story today, that's a possibility now coming from Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, he will be a top 12 running back more times than not until Christian McCaffrey does come back. And everything about the McCaffrey injury is it's very weird. I feel like we're not getting the full story here as far as what's going on. I mean, he was out at practice yesterday on Thursday, and the 49ers notoriously have tough practices on Thursdays. But then he came back on Friday saying he was feeling a measurable amount of pain, which is why they're like, all right, we're rolling him out. And now they're talking about potentially IR. I do think, and we talked with Brian Scott, yesterday on the Operation Domination show, and his thing was it's going to be all about rest. Eventually, what's going to happen is if he rests his way through, quote unquote, the rough patch, let's say, he could be back close to 100% when that time comes if they treat him with kid gloves. So I don't think this is an entire season thing because clearly the 49ers, they want to go to the Super Bowl. That's why they are playing this safe. They're not going to push him out there before he's ready, especially this early on when it doesn't matter that much. But it does mean, I think, I don't know if he's going to go on IR, but I do think we're going to get at least another 2 to 3 weeks of Jordan Mason being a must play in your lineups.
Man. All right. It's going to be crazy. I've got, some trades that are going on. According to Dynasty Daddy, this is in the trade database. And I mean, people want Jordan Mason. I actually traded away Jordan Mason today for 2025 seconds, 2026 seconds, and Jordan Whittington and Alexander Madison. This is in Dynasty, of course. So, this is me cashing out. This was after the news came out of him being on IR. This was a rebuilding team as well, for what it's worth. Otherwise, I would be holding on to Mason. But, for me, long term, I actually want to ask you the question, will this grow into some role when Christian McCaffrey comes back? I do expect him to, hopefully come back this year, but next year McCaffrey probably still on the team, right? Unless this is just like leading up to the next snap.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So are you selling in Jordan Mason in Dynasty?
I'm selling him all the way. So with the contract extension that McCaffrey got, it guarantees that not only is he on the team next year, he's probably on the team the year after that. Now, what kind of player he is, how effective he is, we'll have to see. But we have probably another at least 2 years of Christian McCaffrey on San Francisco. The other thing is that while I love Jordan Mason, we have seen these Shanahan guys who've shown us flashes in the past go on to other teams and then not produce. And the reason why I say maybe he doesn't stay in San Francisco, well, I mean, every single year, Shanahan takes a running back in day 3. Like he took Garendo this past year. So it could be Jordan Mason for now. It may not be Jordan Mason next season. Like it could be that quick. So while I love him for this system, this is the time to sell him because of the pattern that Shanahan has shown us in the past.
Yeah. And Mason, he's not a rookie, so it's not like he came out of complete nowhere. And you kind of alluded to another question I had, but we did get a question in the chat. So I wanted to jump right over to that. Steven asked, Devontae Adams, Brian Robinson Jr., J.K. Dobbins, half PPR, pick one. Who do you got, Dan?
Oh, so it's very hard to bench Devontae Adams. So I'm guessing this is a flex question because he's got a couple of running backs in there too. So I do have J.K. Dobbins as a top 14 play this week. I love all of them, by the way. I love Brian Robinson this week, especially against the Giants. Devontae Adams is going to have to be leaned on from a target perspective, but half point PPR. I know J.K. Dobbins only split the carries with Gus Edwards, but there's no question as far as which running back looks better. Like Gus Edwards looks like he's not recovered from his knee issues and looks even slower than he normally does, where Dobbins is ripping off runs. And let's combine that with the fact of playing Carolina, who just lost Eric Brown or already bad against the run to begin with. I would not be shocked if J.K. Dobbins finishes a top 5 running back this week. So from that standpoint, much more upside, I would go J.K. Dobbins.
All right. And that would be crazy because he was the top 5 rusher last week. And Steve adds, would you play any of the 2 running backs over Jacobs? And I wanted to quickly add that, so I'm a producer with Player Profiler, and Josh Larkey, I just posted on the page for Player Profiler a quote from him where he's saying that Devin Singletary and Josh Jacobs aren't that much different this week. Both are running backs who are expected to get big workloads, but one, Vegas is actually projecting to have a better touchdown scoring output, and that being the New York Giants versus the Washington Commanders, because the Commanders do have a tough or bad defense. So, that's for what it's worth. You got to be a little bit lower on Josh Jacobs. We haven't seen Malik Willis have any receivers get over 40 yards, I believe. This is going to be completely just we have to just know it's going to be disastrous. If you think the coach is such a guru that he can, turn Malik Willis into gold, then go pick him up in DFS or something, and you might be able to make some money. Man.
Oh man, yeah. Malik Willis only averages 73 yards passing in his 3 starts that he's had. So yeah, of course, no receiver's going over 40 yards because he's only throwing for 73.
Brutal.
So yeah, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. You can't start any of the Packer wide receivers first and foremost. And with Jacobs is going to get a ton of volume, but you got to figure the Colts are going to probably have no fear in playing 9+ guys in the box, right? The one thing I will say, Jacobs looked good against the Eagles, and he was breaking off tackle. I got to find it in front of me in a little bit, but he was in the top 10 as far as forced tackles missed this past week. So he looks good, and kind of like Carolina, not quite as bad, but kind of like Carolina, the Colts are pretty bad against the run. Especially this week, they're going to have no DeForest Buckner, most likely, and they already got gashed by Joe Mixon the following week. And LaFleur is going to do everything in that very friendly running back zone scheme to try to get them going. So as far as the question goes, would you play any of those 2 running backs over Jacobs? Maybe JK, but I still have Jacobs ahead of those guys for this week because of how good he looked and how much his offense is going to have to flow through him. Remember, Derrick Henry, now he's Derrick Henry, sure, but he still had good games even when Malik Willis is the quarterback. So it is possible for the running game to get going in this instance. But the Devin Singletary thing, I wouldn't be surprised. We've seen Devin Singletary have top 5 performances. It is Washington's defense, but Daniel Jones and that Giants offense looks broken. I also trust LaFleur and his scheme and his players more than I would trust Brian Dable right now with the Giants.
Yeah, it's a hot take. That's why we posted it. But
Yeah, no, but it does make you think. It's worth talking about.
yeah. All right. So it sounds like you're going JK just because he looked back with the Carolina matchup.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Cool. Well, let's just go back over here really quick because I had a couple questions. But what you were alluding to before was the other back there, Isaac Guerrero, and again, Elijah Mitchell's on IR. So now McCaffrey's on IR. The way I've been trying to think of how, when I'm trying to just give people advice, the clearest way to speak about the running back position is, okay, the only people that can get injured in football are the people who are on the field. Okay. So that means if Jordan Mason's the guy on the field, he's the guy who can get injured. McCaffrey's no longer getting injured. That happened. Isaac Guerrendo's not getting injured. The only person who can get injured now is Jordan Mason on that team. Now, maybe he doesn't, but I'm just saying that's the next person in line that you have to be thinking of a plan B for. So is it Isaac Guerrero? Is it someone else I'm sleeping on? And I'm also curious about the dynasty perspective. Are you stashing him for later on?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it is, just from depth chart, just from who was going to get the snaps if Jordan Mason ever took a break on that Monday night game, it was going to be Isaac Guerrero. So yeah, he is the guy I think you want if behind Jordan Mason while Christian McCaffrey's out, or especially if he actually does wind up hitting the IR. We still don't know about that yet. Yeah, I would stash him for the future too. The thing about Isaiah Guerrero is, yes, he's another day 3 mid pick by Kyle Shanahan, right? And these guys haven't worked out. Trey Sermon, the list goes on and on. He's hit better on his Elijah Mitchells of the world or the the undrafted free agents and Jordan Mason. Like he's done better with those guys than the guys he's actually drafted in the 3rd, 4th round in the past. But Guerrendo's a little bit different in the sense of he not only does he have the speed to hit that outside zone, he actually has some wiggle. And he actually is a good pass catcher. And that's something like Tyrion Davis-Price. He wasn't a good pass catcher. Trey Sermon wasn't a good pass catcher. So he has that element to his game that does give him a little extra upside than some of those other picks we've seen Shanahan take in that range. So, yeah, I do think Guerrero is the guy. I do want to stash him for dynasty purposes as well.
Yeah, if he's out there just hanging out, might as well, guys. All right. Yeah, that's what I did. And now I wanted to look at just some trades for Jordan Mason. I'm sure if you want to try to get Guerrero, you can get him cheap for now. You just got to hope nothing happens this weekend. So again, I did. I give away Jordan Mason. I get 2 seconds, Jordan Winnington, and Alexander Madison. I haven't seen even that package on here in that way. There's some that have so much going on that you can't exactly tell, but a lot of these I'm seeing are just straight up people cashing out 2nd round pick in the I'm seeing 2026 even 2nd round pick for Jordan Mason. So I definitely got more than what's going on here. But that was actually in the co-managed team, and my partner was like, maybe if we held out till next week, we could get a first out of it. Do you think that is going to happen? And do you think that today's cash out price of a second, or the one I got for 2 seconds, is a price you just accept and move away with?
I mean, a 2nd round is a great price. So it's something that I would take. As far as trying to play the guessing game, right? On one hand, if McCaffrey does go on IR, I do think, especially from the McCaffrey owner, whom I would guess if you have McCaffrey, you're probably trying to compete for a championship. I do think there's an off chance that you could get that 1st rounder from that person if you wait another week. However, if we find out, hey, McCaffrey's starting to finally feel better next week, and all of a sudden he's back, I don't know, week 4, then that's not going to happen. Right. You're not probably going to get a 2nd rounder that if they know it's going to be that short of a timetable too. So if somebody gives me a 2nd rounder right now, especially 2025, I'm probably taking that deal. If it's a 2026 2nd rounder, that's the best I can get. I might wait to see if the 49ers play this real cautious because they might. So I might try to take that chance from that instance.
Yeah. And Dynasty Daddy takes some of my bandwidth here, so I'm going to drop that there. But I had a problem with giving just 1 second because and actually the team had finished eighth last year. So last year they had the 204. I don't think they're gonna have the 204 again. It should be a better team this year. Maybe it's the 208, and that's not great. But at the same time, you might get a Blake Corum type in that range or better in this next class if the running back class is indeed better. So it's just not super exciting in the late second round range for me. So I just kind of wanted to just let me get something in case the rug gets pulled from underneath our feet on Jordan Mason. So I was like, give me the 2 seconds. And he just threw in a couple other players to make some roster space. But it was another running back and a receiver. So for me, I was like, okay, but I still got a little FOMO because I know I know he's going to be going off this next week.
But no, that's a great point too. Like, not every second rounder is made the same. If it's a team where it's a late second round pick and makes a borderline third rounder, no, I probably wouldn't want to do that either. I'd probably want a mid-level second round pick or higher. Yeah, everything's not made the same. So you have to be able to look at your teams and guess, where you're probably going to finish at and go from there.
Yeah. All right. So I think we've beat that one into the ground, but it was big news. So I appreciate you covering it with me. And we got another question. So RGQ, thoughts on this trade? Half PPR Pittman Ford for Mike Evans and Lad McConkey. He had no running backup. Mixon, Singletary is his starters. I need an upgrade at wide receiver. Okay. And then he went ahead and tossed in, should I have offered Najee instead? I'm just worried about Chubb coming back. I'm not too worried about Chubb coming back, to be honest, because also the team is not great. So it's just, yeah. Anyway, so Ford, I would be worried either way with Ford, is what I'm saying. So yeah, if you're saying he's giving up Ford, Pittman, and then you're getting Evans and Ladd. I mean, Ladd's kind of the best asset here. We've seen him be good. He's paired with the best thrower of the football long term. Evans is kind of down tiering, but he can help you this year. And I would see Pittman and Evans as equal if Pittman could score as close to Evans. So it's just I like the Ladd Evans side there. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I slightly lean Evans and Ladd there myself. I mean, Ladd already looks like he's number one receiver for the Chargers, right? And I know it's not going to be a pass-heavy offense ever with Greg Roman.
This is redraft for what it's worth.
Oh, it is redraft. Okay, it still would lean to Evans and Ladd, by the way. But that makes it even a little bit more simpler from the sense of I definitely want Mike Evans over Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman is a low-end wide receiver 2. Mike Evans is a wide receiver 1, plain and simple. Jerome Ford here. Look, I'm not worried about Nick Chubb coming back either. And I do think Deshaun Watson, it gets benched at some point this season for Jameis Winston, because I'm telling you right now, Kevin Stefanski is not losing his job over Deshaun Watson's noodle arm. It's not going to happen. So I do think Winston's going to start for him at some point. So things could maybe get a little bit better from that standpoint for Cleveland at some point. And I do like Ford, but Ladd's just going to keep getting better. And Mike Evans is the biggest upgrade right there, because I do not like Anthony Richardson as a thrower of the football. I'm just not a fan. He's not accurate. It's big play or nothing. That's what he's been since college. So I don't love Pittman here. So I'd rather get the upgrade there because it's Evans, and that's the biggest one for me.
Yeah, I've got Mike Evans as wide receiver at 9 this week, and Pittman. Let's move this comment here. Pittman down. Yep, 17. They're at the bottom left. So I mean, that's almost 10 spot difference there. Yeah, I feel a lot better about Mike Evans, and Baker's looking good too. Richardson's throwing some bombs, but that is not Pittman's game.
Right.
So
right.
Everyone else is looking good, but Pittman is kind of getting left there to just eat up the cornerback one's attention.
As far as the Najee thing goes, because he also asked, should he have offered Najee instead? No, I like Najee more for Arthur Smith. And I was on this all summer long. I was like, look, everyone's trying to pump up Jaylen Warren. I know I got the hamstring, and that's playing a little bit into it right now, but everyone's trying to pump up Jaylen Warren like, oh, he's more efficient. He's going to be this. I'm like, this is Tony Pollard to Ezekiel Elliott, except for now, instead of getting Mike McCarthy, you got you get a run-first coach who wants to pound the football and dial this back to 1960 and Arthur Smith. Yeah. So it's like, no, Najee Harris is going to be the guy. They're going to play grimy, murky, muddy, ugly type football. That's going to be Najee the whole way with trying to play bully ball. So I would not have offered Najee. I'd rather have offered Jerome Ford
Yeah.
in that deal.
Yeah, he's got a guaranteed workload, and he's the only running back since he's been in the league to not miss a game. And
Yeah.
we could use that, especially late in the season. Someone that's actually going to be there for us. All right, man. So I usually kind of fly through like the quarterbacks, but I'm just curious. Just want to check on this question really quick. Okay, we did get one more. He says same reason I'm trying to get away from Indy. Then RGQ says to segue, would you start Najee versus Denver or Ford versus Jacksonville? So okay, this is if he doesn't get the trade done and he's holding both these players. Who would you start?
Yeah, so I have Najee Harris at RB18 this week, and I have Jerome Ford at RB22. So it is close because I do like Ford against Jacksonville, but I would go Najee. Denver's defense looks like it has not improved at all. So I'm all about that, attacking them.
Yeah, I've got Ford at 19, Najee at 25. So not too far off there. I'm good with both. I mean, without Njoku, I know maybe you would think they might be behind and trying to pass a lot, but that could benefit Ford if Watson can't really get it to anyone else. And Ford's one of the
last week. Yeah, he's involved in the passing game for sure.
yeah. Daryl D. Thoughts on selling Ramondre Stevenson? And I've got him here at 14. And, they just signed him to contract. I feel like they're committed to using him. Seahawks have a nice little defense, and he's specifying for T. Higgins, who hasn't played yet this season. Who would you trade Ramondre for T. Higgins? And Daryl, if you can add, this is redraft, I'm guessing, not dynasty. But yeah, how about you? How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way I'm trading Ramondre Stevenson for T. Higgins. Not a shot. T. Higgins, I've been saying this for a while now. T. Higgins to me is
And he
Mike
says
Williams.
Dynasty, and
I still
don't do it. Don't do it.
Still wouldn't do it. I still would not do that. T. Higgins is Mike Williams. Okay. He's that receiver we pump up every single year. We see the talent. We see the opportunity. He's with the quarterback. He's in the offense that we need him to be to produce. And he's hurt every single year. He is the new Mike Williams. Ramondre fits the system beautifully. He fits Van Pelt perfectly with what they want to do. And don't forget, Stevenson catches the ball too. No, there's no way. It would have to be a low-end wide receiver one for me to even think about moving on from Ramondre Stevenson right now.
Okay, but just one more thought from that dynasty perspective. T. Higgins didn't get the contract he wanted. Does he move on to a new team and get that contract? That's not even a question. I think he moves on from this team, gets a contract elsewhere. Maybe he still ends up being a wide receiver too, but maybe he's a wide receiver one. Just last chance, final answer. Does that matter at all to you, or you just like I just want to win with Ramondre right now?
Mike Williams is on a new team. Is he playing or is he hurt? It doesn't change. You can go to a new team. It doesn't change your physicality of being available.
Dang. Man, that is brutal. Well, I thought I was done with the soundbite, but he just roasted T. Higgins right there. Golly. Okay. Hey, you couldn't have said it any better than that. All right. So yeah, selling high and Ramondre. Yeah, just got appointed to captain. Yeah, I guess he's being facetious. I don't know.
Yeah, the captain. I don't care about the captain thing, but
yeah. Ramondre isn't hurt all the time though. Yeah, he's getting hold.
Last year was the only time he was injured. That's the only time in his career he's been injured. That's it.
Yeah, that's true. And he had a good first season too, so it's hard to deny what he's been able to do. Yeah, now dude's a workhorse. What I'm saying is you can get someone better, in my opinion, than T. Higgins. I think he's talking about.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So at the quarterback spot, I'm curious your take on what is. Let me get it back up. So yeah, for you, how are you feeling about? So I want to get your Caleb Williams take because he's going to be playing against CJ Stroud. But for one, how do you feel about CJ Stroud specifically because he's not a rushing quarterback, and you really have to stack rank him against all these guys. And I basically have all the rushing quarterbacks ahead of him, except for the Fields because he hasn't added the passing part. But how do you feel about CJ Stroud from a dynasty perspective? Let's say these are the dynasty rankings. I probably let me. Jade, I mean, Jaden, Jaden Daniels was making a case. How do you feel? Where's CJ Stroud in your dynasty rankings?
He'd probably be about 7. Yeah, that makes sense to me. The guy's a QB1, right? And yes, Stephon Diggs is probably only here for the season, but Nico Collins and Tank
Mm-hmm.
Dell aren't going anywhere. I think the only thing I'd worry about long term would be Bobby Slowick sticking around because he might wind up being a head
Mm-hmm.
coach sooner rather than later. But you do have D'Amico Ryans, who's, he's just going to go over to San Francisco or, whoever's running or the Dolphins and be like, all right, who's your guy's next man up? We're going to promote him, bring him over to be offensive coordinator. He's going to stay with that system. So CJ Stroud to me is a stud. He could go, and I'm not saying he is, but he could go Mahomesian level if they keep these weapons and this system in place for him, because he's going to have, I do believe, a 40 touchdown passing season in his career. And we haven't seen the best of him. And I do think we're going to hit that level there with CJ Stroud. So yeah, I love him from a dynasty perspective. I think he's a stud.
Yeah, we only got that massive season once from Mahomes. I think people were still chasing it, thinking it would happen again and again. So I do think we get it, but you have to sell high. I love Stroud. I have him. I never took Bryce Young. I only took Stroud, and he's kind of already peaking. But I haven't. I'm still holding. I love Stroud and all the weapons. But if it happens where he just gets that crazy, now he's the QB1. In dynasty conversation, then we gotta make a change there. It's just the rushing threat is just too crazy for a lot of these guys, and there's just more and more of these rushing quarterbacks coming into the league.
Yeah, sure, but my point is, I do think we're gonna get that season at a CJ Stroud at some point. If it's not this year, in the next couple of years, and then I'm with you. Then that's when you move off.
Yeah. All right, and then so instead of going to Caleb Williams, because no, we'll go to Caleb Williams right now since it's in the same game. So I have him at 19 for this week. It was just a down performance, but also they lost the rookie wide receiver. I don't know if he's going to play after all in this game, but usually they're a little bit cautious. And Rome Odunze had a bit of an injury, so I don't think that super factors into it because he's still just a young quarterback. And this week I think Houston qualifies as a tough matchup. Did that shake you at all from a dynasty perspective? Are you thinking you can buy low if there's another down week? Because I got people saying, "Oh, you can't buy low." Well, he's getting traded right now every day, so I don't know.
Yeah. I love when people try to tell you can't buy low or sell high on these guys. I'm like, look, we have all this data that we can go to, but like, you're going to trade for this. You're going to trade for it is happening out there for 100%. Maybe it's not in your league. I don't know, but there's leagues where it is happening. I'm dynasty perspective. I'm not worried at all. I'm not worried a little bit here.
There we go. Don't flinch.
Look, I was talking about this last week when we were doing our week 1 preview that Caleb Williams wasn't going anywhere near my starting lineup. And I kept trying to explain to people, Tennessee's defense is for real this year. They did a complete overhaul. This is not the Titans defense from last season. Okay. So I didn't expect him to have a good game. And guess what? Houston's defense is better than people realize too. I don't expect him to have a good game this week, especially if Odunze, who did limited practice today, but I think he's still 50-50, and Keenan Allen's 50-50. So now you might get Derek Stingley in a shadow coverage with DJ Moore. So you're going to be depending on DeAndre Swift to bail you out. I don't think he's going to have a great game this week. They have a hell of a pass rush there in Houston. And as we saw last week, that Bears offensive line, maybe they ain't so average as we thought they maybe were. They might be well below average here. They're going to have a tough time with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter in that defense. So I'm not expecting him to have a good week this week. So if you can buy him low, absolutely 100%. But from a dynasty perspective, from a long-term perspective, I love Caleb Williams. Okay. Yeah. I love him to death. I don't think this is going to be an issue.
Yeah, and he still has the ability to move on the ground. So, look, he's not going to be pulling a Jaden Daniels, but with like 16 carries. But I still think Caleb has some sneaky upside. Maybe it isn't this game, but I'm holding and I'm not panicking. All right, and then we did get a question here from Daryl. Which of Musgrave, Michael Mayer, Okonkwo, and Kobe Parkinson are you both keeping? So, question for both of us, and he says in Dynasty, if you had to drop 3, I mean, did I get the rest of that question? Oh man,
I'm
so
guessing
he has to
he's
drop
he's
3 of these guys. What?
I'm guessing that's what he's talking about. Yeah, he's got to
Wow.
drop 3 of these guys.
Yeah, I've been in those spots, to be honest. I mean, because look, tight end isn't the most valuable position, especially because you can't get any trade equity out of it. So sometimes you have to make a tough move. So look, Mayer had a down week. Excuse me, Musgrave had a down week, but Michael Mayer, I would. That it sounds bad, but yeah, I think you have to at least consider it. You're basically having to wait for Devontae Adams to leave, and then you have to hope that Raiders are creative enough to run 2 tight end sets effectively for him to just be decent. Otherwise, you're just hoping, like what happened with the Saints this past week, where somehow 2 tight ends end up in the top 5 just based on a blowout game. But that's not going to come every week. Um, it's sad to say Mayer. Yeah, so for me, it would be Mayer, Parkinson. I'm basically holding Musgrave just because I like the quarterback that he has, and Parkinson I don't think has dynasty value, and the other tight end may be coming back from injury, and then Okonkwo, he's got his role secured in theory, even though in training camp he was battling with, I believe it was Josh Wiley for that spot. But it looks like he's fine. It's just the offense isn't great, and again, you can't get much for these guys. So it is a weird question because I hate to be dropping 3 guys like this out of nowhere, but I would keep Musgrave here.
No, I would keep Parkinson actually.
Okay,
So Tucker Kraft played more than double the amount of snaps of Musgrave. Musgrave's the
it's
backup
the
tight end.
dynasty, just for what it's worth.
And Tucker Kraft's not going anywhere. They both got drafted the same year, so it's
Yeah.
one of those things where he's not going anywhere either. So if he's the starter and he's the guy coming off a pec injury, and he was a starter week 1, so I don't. Musgrave has a long injury history in his own right. So I think Musgrave's the backup there. Mayer, I don't see ever being a guy who's going to be able to be fantasy relevant. I think he's going to be a good NFL tight end, but as long as he's on the Raiders and they have Brock Bowers, I just don't think he's ever going to be anything consistently. Okonkwo, he's dealing with the fact that they have to have Will Levis at quarterback, and who knows how that looks. And he's a special type of tight end that has to be featured in order to be relevant. Colby Parkinson could be Tyler Higbee. Like, Tyler Higbee's not sexy, but there was a guy that could be a top 12 tight end for you most weeks. I think Colby Parkinson has that exact same type of ability. And the Rams don't go out of their way. Like, I know they talked about trying to get Brock Bowers, but Brock Bowers is a special situation. They really don't go out of their way to go pick up tight ends. So I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up being the guy for a few years here. So I actually like Parkinson quite a bit.
And my rankings, I've got Colby Parkinson at 16 and Chig at 19, and the rest didn't make the cut. So, and if that just keeps going, then you just get the player who's scoring points, I guess, is what you're saying.
Okay, I haven't had
what was that?
I said I got Parkinson at 13 this week, so just outside my top 12.
All right. And he says his guys had Parkinson, Musgrave, both have equal chance to get you 3rd round pick in 2 weeks. Yeah, if you're talking about some trade value, maybe people aren't tapped in as they should be to Dan's show, and they would know you need to be trading away Luke Musgrave. Man. Yeah, last year I was thinking Tucker Kraft might be the tight end 1, but the way the offseason went, I was like, never mind, Musgrave got it, but Musgrave couldn't stay healthy last year, so gave him that little door opening for him. So, all right, and then I wanted to just go back to Jaden Daniels. I was saving him for after the Caleb Williams talk, and Jaden Daniels, a really incredible week 1. I have a league where a redraft where that was just the quarterback I drafted. I didn't draft any other quarterback, and I'm just playing Jaden Daniels. Some of the other leagues I did bench him for some known commodities and regretted that. So where is Jaden Daniels in the dynasty rankings for you now?
So it's really interesting from a dynasty perspective because I love Jaden Daniels for redraft. He is my quarterback in so many redraft leagues.
Nice.
Because I just love his rushing upside. I have zero faith that this guy is going to stay healthy throughout his career because he takes way too many hits. We saw it on Sunday. Like, you can't take the hits he did in LSU. He didn't know how to slide and avoid hits. And we saw on Sunday, he doesn't know how to slide and avoid hits there either. It's going to take a toll on him at some point. So from a dynasty perspective, I actually view him as a sell high prospect, frankly. And then
Okay.
there's some things about his game as a passer too. Like the guy, he doesn't read pressures very well. He doesn't know how to check the ball down. He has a nice deep ball, but anything else in between needs a lot of work. He's still really raw. I don't know if you're ever going to get the weapons in Washington. Cliff Kingsbury certainly isn't the creative, play caller you need to overcome that. So there's a lot of concerns I have about Daniels long term, but I love him this year. And if you're doing this from a dynasty perspective, yeah, I think he's definitely a sell high. We get into the latter half of the season. I think you can get whatever you want for him because he's going to have a great year.
Yeah. Yeah. His values is shooting up. So let me ask the same about Anthony Richardson because he showed that he's back and he was very, very exciting last year, but he didn't give us enough time really to trade at that peak. I mean, maybe, yeah, you could have, but where do you have Richardson? Ahead, behind Daniels?
I mean, I put
Where
him
do
in
you
the
got him?
certain things here. Like I view them exactly the same way. I'd also would be
Okay.
looking to sell high on Richardson when the time comes. I kind of, he's a more raw passer than Jane Daniels is. So he's somebody who's going to really lean on running, and he's not built like Cam was a solid, beautiful sculpture. Richardson's big, but he's not built the same way. I don't think he could take the same type of punishment Cam did. And that's why I don't think he's going to be able to last as long either. And we kind of saw that come to fruition last year. And I worry about that because he also is another guy who just plays with reckless abandon and doesn't know how to, just protect his body. The guy who's the best at is Lamar. I've never seen a quarterback who runs as much as he does, but always finds a way to just not take that devastating hit. Never does. And that's why I've never had issues thinking Lamar would be able to do this throughout his career. But when it comes to guys like Richardson and Daniels, it's like you're looking for contact. Like you got to know you're the quarterback. Get out of the way. So I do worry about Richardson long term as well. I kind of just put him and Daniels in that same group of like when they peak this season, because I do think they'll be great for fantasy this season. Strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah, and I felt like what you said about Lamar. I mean, coming in lighter and just looking super fast and really aggressively trying to win those games. And it could have been a little bit of revenge, and maybe I can only go off what I'm seeing, right? Maybe he wants to preserve himself, and they lean on Derrick Henry later in the season, and who knows? But with that 1 week sample, I mean, he looked back. Still, if you're one of those people that view him as like, the age apex being closer to a running back's age apex, you just mentioned how he's not taking those hits. So I'm not really there. He is trying to preserve his body, but for Dynasty, he was getting taken, as maybe QB4 for people that were still believing, but we saw him falling even lower, QB 5, 6. I think he started to rise back up towards the draft season. Where do you have him now in Dynasty?
Lamar's still to the moon. When I'm playing Dynasty, I'm only looking 2 to 3 years out. Okay.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm doing startups. I'm not looking 5 and 10 years away because half the time some of these dynasty leagues you're in are not even going to last that long anyway. I'm looking 2 to 3 years out. I'm not looking any further down the road. Lamar's just a different type of player, man. He's just a different kind of dude. And I don't see him again because of the way he runs, the way he attacks these things. I don't see this being a guy who's going to slow down anytime soon. So Lamar honestly would still be my number one in Dynasty, maybe number two. If you want to be like, well, Patrick Mahomes can do this for the next 10 years, if you're looking at, that long term, I guess, kind of deal. But he's one or two when it comes to Dynasty, without a doubt in my mind.
All right. And we just want to go over one more position, wide receivers. We talked about the Miami guys, and that was pretty much it. I'll quickly ask, well, wait, we got a little question here. Did you fellas get a good look at Quentin Johnston and Zamir White this weekend? Thoughts on either? Yeah, how you
Yeah,
feel about those guys?
they are what I thought they were.
Okay. Yeah.
They're not that good. Look, Quentin Johnston played because DJ Chark was out. I think he would have been the fourth receiver if DJ Chark was actually playing because that's the way it went during training camp. So that's number one. And even if Quentin Johnston hold on to the starting job, we talked about only one receiver can live in a Greg Roman offense. Okay, and that's going to be Ladd McConkey. And the Zamir White thing, like, I didn't think he was that good. He doesn't catch the ball. He's not that good of an athlete. So am I a little bit surprised that Alexander Madison got the work that he did? Yeah, but he's also a much better pass catcher. So I'm not totally surprised from that standpoint. I do think Dylan Luabe gets involved on third downs at some point this season. They're just not that good. So, yeah, no, I'm not surprised at all.
All right. And so wide receiver. We did lose potentially Tua for Tyreek, but let's just say we're not worried about that. Who do you feel like is the wide receiver one right now in Dynasty? Like you're talking about, you're not worried about anything beyond 2 to 3 years. Tyreek. That's why a lot of folks are still smashing Tyreek at the top. Just with the current state of the state, sticking to Dynasty though. Who's your wide receiver one?
Because they got the contract done with the quarterback, it's CeeDee Lamb. So Dak's locked in, CeeDee's locked in, and because they're locked in for so much money, there's only so much they're going to be able to do to bring in other assets to take away potential targets from CeeDee Lamb. So it's CeeDee Lamb for me, like all the way. I mean, Minnesota, I would love to see what happens for their quarterback position, in the future with JJ McCarthy. How does he look down the road? Because I do think Jefferson's the best NFL wide receiver in the game, but for fantasy, it's CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys have long-term contracts here, but it's only Lamb, Amon-Ra, Jamar Chase, who I feel like has a locked-in connection with their quarterback for long term. Oh wait, Rashee Rice, can't forget that one. But there's a lot of these guys where I'm not too sure. Okay, Nico Collins and Worthy, they make that cut as well. But that stability matters. Cooper Kupp has both his age and his quarterback's age to worry about. Amon-Ra's quarterback is a little bit older. Goff's got some time, but I just don't love Goff necessarily. Maybe AJ Brown and that Hurts connection does last very long. I feel like Brown has a couple more seasons. I could be wrong about that, where he's fully healthy, and I don't know. Maybe I'm biased there, but yeah. I mean, I love seeing Cooper Kupp make that bounce back. Let's talk about Puka Nacua, and then we'll basically get out of here after that. Puka Nacua, where does he fall in the dynasty rankings?
He's still a top 12 wide receiver for me. So, Cooper Kupp's 31, and I do think he has one more special season left in him. And I think we're going to see it this year, especially with what's going on with Puka right now. But Puka's really good. Okay. Sean McVay knows what he can do. He can play inside and out. He's the perfect fit for that offense. The knee thing is not going to last forever, everybody. And I know Matthew Stafford's older, but do you really think the Rams and Sean McVay are not going to be the type of team to make sure they get a quarterback that they like at some point? So I'm not really worried about it from that standpoint. Long term, I'm good on Puka. He's a top 12 guy.
All right, good. All right. Don't give up on Puka yet. I'm sure the sell low offers have been flooding a lot of people's inboxes recently.
Oh, I'm sure.
Sorry, just two rookies: Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors. You still all in?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all in on both of them. Yeah, Week 1 did not deter me from that whatsoever.
Yeah. So, are you trading Malik Neighbors for Xavier Worthy?
If I'm getting Malik Neighbors in that deal, yeah.
All right. Yeah. I think the target floor is going to be higher with him. Worthy only 3 targets or 3 touches. They won't, maybe it's 3 targets, but one of those touchdowns was a run. So for me, I'm just going with that target share. I think he's just going to get that over his career. So yeah, man. Really appreciate you coming on. I wanted to try to get just one hot take from you for week 2. Could be bold prediction, hot take. But first, man, let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, man. So you can check me out on Twitter, and it is Twitter. It's not X, by the way. You can check me out at Dan Mater FF on there, but mostly check out Operation Domination on the Fantasy Sports Advice Network. You go ahead, be a pro member because you get access to everything that we have to offer, and it's really a great community. If you want to do it for free to try it out, you can have access to the actual community chat for as far as that part goes, and get helped out. But yeah, check out Operation Domination Football on your podcast. Operation Domination 9:30 on Wednesday nights and 8 o'clock on Thursday nights on the Fantasy Football Advice Network on YouTube, and hit me at Dan Mater FF on Twitter.
That's right. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty F Key. You can find me and my compatriot Biggs on Tuesdays at the Dynasty Stock Market on Player Profiler News. And actually, Biggs on another network with me, but we have separate shows on the Undroppables. He covers the Raiders, and I cover the Cowboys. So let's go. Hoping for another good week for them boys. And yeah, man, lay a hot take on us. Just give me the hot take. We don't need any backdrop, and I'll hit the outro.
You want for the hot take for the week or hot take for
Yeah,
the
hot
season?
take for the week.
Jalen Tolbert finishes the top 40 wide receiver.